My fiancé left me for my best friend, but he had a secret that ruined them both. You know how they say your wedding day is supposed to be the happiest day of your life? Well, mine never even happened. It was 2 months before the big day when my fiancé looked me in the eyes and said the 7 words that cracked my entire world apart. I think I'm in love with someone else. And the worst part? That someone else wasn't a stranger. She wasn't some girl from work or a random woman he met online. No, it was my best friend, the girl who had been by my side since we were 14, the one I trusted with my deepest secrets, including the one that would eventually destroy them both. To really understand how devastating this was, you need to know the backstory. My name is Rochelle. I am 25 years old, working as an architect. I met Daniel in college. He was a year ahead of me, studying architecture too. He wasn't the type to stand out in a crowd, no flashy clothes, no loud voice, but he had this calm confidence that pulled me in. We started dating slowly. He'd take me to this little coffee shop off campus where the tables were too close together and the cappuccinos were always just a little too bitter. But with him, even bitter coffee tasted sweet. We'd walk for hours, talking about everything and nothing. He'd sketch buildings in my notebook while I tried to guess what they were. One day he drew a little house by the lake and said, "One day we'll have a place like this." I believed him. And then there was Sophie, my best friend. We met in high school when she moved to town. She was the kind of girl everyone noticed, loud, funny, fearless. If I was the quiet one who blended into the background, Sophie was the spotlight. Over the years, we went through everything together: breakups, family drama, late-night drives where we'd scream along to old rock songs. I told her everything. When I started dating Daniel, she was actually the one who encouraged me to take a chance on him. She said, "You two are like puzzle pieces. It just fits." And it did. For a while, fast forward 3 years, Daniel and I were engaged. Sophie was my maid of honor. At first, everything felt perfect. Sophie was helping me plan the wedding, picking flowers, tasting cakes, even coming to dress fittings. But then, I started noticing little things. Whenever we were all together, Sophie and Daniel would linger. A shared joke I wasn't in on. A look that lasted a second too long. One night, I walked into the living room and found them sitting close together on the couch, laughing about something on his phone. They both jumped a little when they saw me, like kids caught doing something they shouldn't. I brushed it off. These were my two favorite people in the world. Why would I suspect anything? But it didn't stop. Texts from Daniel saying he'd be working late, but Sophie would text me saying she was out with a friend. Her perfume lingering in my apartment even though she wasn't supposed to be there. The little hairs on the back of my neck started to rise. It all came to a head one Friday night. Daniel came over looking nervous. He sat me down and said, "I think I'm in love with someone else." The words hit me like a punch. I just stared at him, my brain scrambling to make sense of it. "Who?" I finally asked. And then he said her name. Sophie. At first I laughed, this horrible broken laugh, because it sounded like some cruel joke. But his face told me it wasn't. He tried to explain, said they didn't mean for it to happen, that it just happened, that they never planned it, as if that made it better. I kicked him out. I didn't cry right away. The tears came later, at 3 a.m., when I sat on my kitchen floor with an empty wine bottle, trying to figure out how I'd lost the two people I trusted most. In one night. Here's the thing about secrets. They have a way of clawing their way to the surface. And Sophie, she had a big one. See, years ago, long before Daniel, Sophie had been involved in something ugly. I'd been the only one she told. She'd been seeing this older, married man when she was just 19. It was an affair that ended badly, messy, public, and humiliating. The guy's wife found out and went after Sophie online, calling her a homewrecker. Sophie swore she'd changed, that she'd never do something like that again. I believed her. But now I saw the pattern, and I wasn't the only one who knew. Apparently, Daniel's family had heard whispers about Sophie. They didn't approve of her. They thought she was dangerous and unstable. At first, Daniel defended her. But over the weeks, little cracks began to show. She was jealous, controlling, the same traits she'd shown before. One night, I got a text from Daniel. It was one sentence. "You were right about her." Turns out, Sophie had been hiding something from him, too. She was still talking to her ex, the married man, from all those years ago. And not just talking. When Daniel found out, it was over. They both tried to come back into my life, in their own ways. Sophie sent me a long, rambling message about how she never meant to hurt me, and that Daniel was just a mistake. Daniel showed up at my door one night, looking like he hadn't slept in days, saying he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. But the thing is, some things you can't come back from. I told them both the same thing. You made your choice. Now, live with it. It's been 2 years now. I've moved to a new city, started over. And sometimes when I'm walking by the lake, I think about that little house Daniel once drew in my notebook. I realize now, I'll build my own. And it will be mine. No shared secrets, no stolen trust. It was the kind of day you could almost miss if you weren't paying attention. The sky was clear, but not showy. The air was cool, the lake calm. I was walking the same trail I'd taken 100 times since moving to this new city, a winding path along the water, where ducks paddled lazily and old couples held hands like they'd been doing it for decades. I liked the anonymity here. Nobody knew who I was, what had happened, or that 2 years earlier, my life had cracked open in the middle of an ordinary week. I was just another woman with coffee in one hand, a tote bag slung over her shoulder, and a mind full of to-do lists. I wasn't looking for anyone, and I certainly wasn't looking for love. So when I tripped over a loose plank on the small wooden dock and someone caught my elbow just before I tumbled into the lake, my brain wasn't prepared for the man attached to that hand. He was warm. That's the first word that comes to mind, even now. Not just in the way his palm was solid and reassuring against my arm, but in the way he looked at me, like I wasn't some stranger he'd just saved from a very embarrassing swim, but someone he'd been waiting to bump into all along. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low and steady. I laughed, brushing my hair out of my face. "Yeah, just testing the durability of the dock, I guess." His smile was slow, amused. Good news, it passed. We stood there for a second too long. The breeze shifted, carrying the smell of water and pine. I should have stepped back, thanked him, and kept walking. But instead, I found myself asking, "Do you come here a lot?" He tilted his head, and I swear I saw the faintest glimmer in his eyes, like he knew exactly where this was heading. "Every Saturday morning, best place in the city to clear your head." That was the start. We ended up walking together that morning, and before I knew it, we were sitting at a small cafe near the pier, him with tea, me with my second coffee of the day. His name was Ethan. He was a carpenter, built custom furniture, mostly from reclaimed wood. That detail made me laugh, because there was something poetic about a man who could take something discarded and turn it into something beautiful. We talked for hours, not just about safe topics like books or favorite places in the city, but about the heavier things, loss, trust, starting over. It surprised me how easy it was to be open with him. By the time I got home, my phone buzzed with a message. "Glad you didn't fall in. Would have been ashamed to meet you only to lose you to the lake." The next weeks blurred into something that felt suspiciously like joy. We met for walks, then dinners, then weekends filled with small adventures, farmers markets, late-night movies, thrift store treasure hunts. I found myself laughing more than I had in years. I wasn't thinking about Sophie's betrayal or Daniel's hollow apologies. Those memories had dulled, faded into the background like an old scar you no longer touch every day. But sometimes, when I least expected it, a flicker of the past would surface. One night we were lying on a blanket under the stars in his backyard. Ethan was telling me about a cabin he was building in the mountains, a little place for himself, nothing fancy. And I thought of that childish sketch Daniel had once made in my notebook, a house by a lake. For a second, the ache returned, sharp and unexpected. But then Ethan turned to me and said, "You know, I could see us building something like that together someday." And I realized the ache wasn't about Daniel anymore. It was about the version of myself who used to believe someone else had to give me that dream. 6 months in, Ethan proposed. Not in some grand, public way. He knew me better than that. It was on a Sunday morning, in the kitchen, while I was making pancakes and humming badly to the radio. He slid a small wooden box across the counter. "I made this," he said, almost shyly. Inside was a simple gold band resting on a cushion of soft fabric. "You can say no," he added, "but I'd really like you to say yes." I didn't hesitate. The wedding was small. Close friends, a few family members, and the lake in the background. The same lake where we'd first met, where I'd almost fallen, and where, without realizing it, I'd been caught in more ways than one. Daniel wasn't there. I hadn't spoken to him in years. But the truth is, by then, I didn't need to. Sometimes people think moving on means forgetting. It doesn't. It means remembering without breaking. Daniel made his choice, and I made mine. And mine had led me here, standing barefoot in the grass, holding Ethan's hands, promising forever without the shadow of the past weighing me down. Now 3 years later, we live in a little house Ethan built himself. There's a garden out back, a workshop where he spends his afternoons, and a porch where we drink coffee in the mornings. Sometimes when the light hits the lake just right, I think about the girl I was, the one who cried over a notebook sketch and thought her future had been stolen. And then I look at Ethan, at the life we've made, and I realize nothing was stolen. It was just waiting for me to claim it. Because this house, this love, it's mine. Every beam, every nail, every laugh echoing through its walls. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. Sometimes the people you love the most are the ones who will cut the deepest. But that pain, it's also the thing that makes you stronger than you ever thought you could be.